Good afternoon and welcome to this NZIOB webinar. My name is Malcolm Fleming, Chief Executive of the New Zealand Institute of Building. Today's event has been proposed by the NZIOB's Young Professional Advisor, or YPA Committee. It is specifically targeted at those students who are in their final year of a construction-related qualification. Our YPA Committee is a group of building industry practitioners who are under the age of 30 and who assist the NZIOB in developing better connections with both students and recent graduates. The chair of the YPA committee attends NZIOB board meetings, which provides a great connection between the board and a group that is developing numerous strategies to increase the NZIOB's relevance to those under 30. This event is the first of a suite of events and programs that will focus on positioning the NZIOB as the membership association of choice for those studying a construction-related qualification. For those of you based in Christchurch, the next student-focused event is an exclusive NZIOB student member site visit to a new hotel that is being constructed on Colombo Street by Cook Brothers. This event is being held on the 5th of November with registration via the NZIOB website. We'd like to acknowledge the head of departments from the country's architectural, engineering, and construction schools who promoted today's events to their students. For today's Getting Job Ready webinar, we have two presenters, Ben Holman and Ben Shaw. Auckland-based Ben Holman is a manager of construction at Hayes. He will provide a recruiter's perspective on what attributes are being sought by employers in the current market with a particular focus on graduate roles. Wellington-based Ben Shaw is a professional resume writer at Successful Resumes. He will focus on the techniques you can apply to make your resume stand out. The purpose of today's webinar is to provide you with some tips and tricks that, if followed, will improve your chances of winning a great job, which of course is the critical first step towards you developing a rewarding career in the construction industry. Over to Ben Holman to start the presentation.
Thank you, Malcolm. Good afternoon, guys. Thanks for joining us. So I work for Hayes here in Auckland, and I'm going to talk to you specifically around process of entering the job market. I think that there are different ways of doing that, and we're just going to explore, in my opinion, what is going to give you the best possible chance of securing what you want to do, and sort of kickstarting the career. So a few disclaimers from me firstly before I get into this. Firstly, apologies for this ridiculous Britney Spears headset. I had a bit of an audio issue earlier on, so this is the best I could do. And secondly, I am a bit of a dinosaur on the technology front, so if you hear any paper rustling, it is me. For my prompts, my notes, but I'll try and keep that to a minimum. So I'm just going to share this with you so you can follow this presentation with me. And we're going to focus on some tips and tricks. Like I say, how do we get into the market? What are the do's and don'ts? How can we make the best use of our energy and our time? So the first thing I'm going to talk about is a bit of market mapping, which, look, I understand that very few of you, if any of you watching and listening to this, want to be a recruitment consultant, and that's fine. But I think if you can at least adopt some core principles and some core methods of a recruitment consultant, and sort of represent yourself, I think you'll get some success and put yourself ahead of the pack, as it were. So before we get on to market mapping in terms of what is it, why do we do it, how do we do it, I think at the absolute sort of core of this, the basic principle is you need to be very clear on what you want, what you want to do in construction. For example, what sort of construction professional are you now and do you want to be? Where not just geographically speaking, but what sector. And that sounds very obvious, I guess, but I think it's a good place to start. I talk to a lot of people day in, day out, and people in certain situations can often have the approach of, I'll do anything, just give me a start. And personally, while I appreciate the process behind that, I think it's better to sort of back yourself and be confident in your abilities and go after what you really want to do. So market mapping, why do we do this? I think it's important to remember that, and this is at any stage of your career, finding a job is not easy from a time perspective. It's a job in itself. So we need a structure, a process in place that helps you be as effective as possible, but also it gives you the ability to track your progress. So we're entering the job market. We know what we want to do. We know where we want to be, sector, location, etc. So we're going to get to work in mapping that market relative to what you want to do. Okay, and this is, by the way, this is a fundamental. This is recruitment. We do this day in, day out. It's a very effective way of leaving no stone unturned, whether you're experienced in the market or you're new to it. So what is mapping? Well, I think, look, one of the definitions that you would find if you Googled it, a sort of business definition, if you like, is the process of using a graph to plot competitors and their products to understand competitor behavior and spot a gap in the market. Might not seem very relevant to you guys on the face of it, but I would politely disagree, because I think, look, the concept is the same. Irrelevant of what angle you're coming at it from, irrelevant of what you're mapping, you can see there, you pull a few words out, put a few different words in there, and it becomes way more relevant. The process of plotting companies and their services to understand organizations and spot a gap in the market. Gap in the market is obviously for you and where you're going to sit moving forward. I think I'm very conscious of time here, and also I don't want to give you I don't want you to feel like you've just joined Hayes. So I've narrowed it right down. The how, there's some fantastic tools that are available to everyone that I'll talk through some of the key ones, but ultimately it's a good old-fashioned research project. Ultimately, we're gathering information is what we're doing. And where do we get that information from? The tools that we use to sort of populate our map, if you like, is varied. But some of the best ones, and like I say, some of the ones that I personally would use, not just here, but previously when I've been in the market job-wise previously. Online publications, of course, I'm not going to give you a full list. There's a lot of information, a lot of content out there. Construction news, master builder, building design, for example. Company publications and white papers. It'd be amiss not to mention NZIOB, of course, put out a lot of fantastic content. Hayes, for example, they produce a salary guide, but it's not just a salary guide. There's a lot of market trend information in there. RLB, the consultancy, they provide a sort of crane index, which can give you a feel of market, companies, who's doing well, who's not, what are their strengths, etc. Pacificon, which is a fantastic tool. I'm not suggesting you obviously would want to sign up and get a subscription to this, but Pacificon, I believe you can sample it and free demos and whatnot. It's a reporting tool. They're a research company and they provide information. Just Google readily available content online. Job boards are a good source of information in terms of vacancies. Where's their demand? You can set up alerts on there straight through to your email. But probably one of the key ones, and this is true again, no matter your level in any industry, network, friends, colleagues, educational institutions, whether you're studying online, whether you're there in person. There's a wealth of knowledge that you can tap into. You've just got to do it. And that's going to be a recurring theme for me throughout this is being proactive. And just doing the basic. So bring together all this information into a centralized point. What is that? Typically, I mean, I suggest you can't go wrong with a good old Excel spreadsheet. And again, this is not an overnight thing. You need to commit some time to this, but it's your career. It's for the long term. It's an investment worth making, in my opinion. So we bring all that information together and we start to map out companies, organizations, and look, your decision-making process, people are different. Are you going to map out companies based on project size or types of projects or sector, or is it sort of social conscience of these companies? What do they do in the community? Whatever, this doesn't matter. It's your choice, but you need somewhere to track all that information. And that's what the market map is ultimately. It's quite satisfying actually, as you're doing this and populating the spreadsheet, to see it build and build. It makes a lot of sense. And like I say, you can then allocate time, half an hour here, an hour here, and you've got a go-to point. So that's mapping the market initially. That's why we do it. That's what it is, and how we do it. The next stage of this process is also mapping, but mapping the map, if you like. So once we know what we want to do, where we want to do it, and we know the companies that can help me achieve what I want to achieve, and we've got them mapped out as organizations. Unfortunately, that's not it. Job's not done, because we need to proactively engage and target these companies. And I'll come on to this in a minute. I'll probably get myself in trouble with any HR people out there or whatever. But the who are we going to contact within them companies is really key. There's a lot of variety out there in terms of what you've focused your efforts on, what area have you graduated in, what do you want to do. So unfortunately I can't sit here and tell you who the relevant person would be, or even what the relevant job title would be, depending on your discipline. But again, the idea is just to have a methodology. How do I find that out? And often what dictates that is you'll already have this information from your mapping previously. So if you look at scale and size of the organization, headcount of that business, turnover, project value, job titles often mean different things in different companies from a responsibility perspective. So it's really important when you're populating your data with actual individuals who you're going to contact and introduce yourself to. It's important you understand, to the best of your ability, and you may get it wrong every now and again, but that's fine. Who are you going to target? And again, just to give you an example, I mean, if I'm a QS and I'm based out in Bay of Plenty, I would be perhaps wasting my time if I was mapping and contacting design managers in Auckland, for example. So it is really important that you understand the reporting line, and also within certain scales of company who does what. Again, all information that you can find and that you would no doubt come across anyway, or probably even know already, but important to add it to the map. Why do we do this? Again, I've touched on it briefly, but my advice is, where possible, again, linking back to what I said earlier, being proactive and whatnot, we have to avoid generic applications where possible. Now, I don't mean, I probably should say, I don't avoid them as in don't ever do them, but it cannot be your sole avenue when getting into the job market. You need to be proactive, showing some initiative, willing to engage with relevant stakeholders, decision makers. Now, they may end up redirecting you to someone in HR or a recruitment person anyway, and that's fine. You've done your job. You've took the bull by the horns, as it were. And I cannot stress how important this is. You know, Malcolm mentioned that I'll be giving an overview of what employers in this market are looking for, particularly at the graduate level. Well, I could stop this now with that. Engagement, proactiveness, initiative is key. And this is a prime way of displaying those attributes, 100%. And also, in truth, and I mean no disrespect here, but recruitment at email addresses or generic HR email addresses, you've got nothing to follow up. You don't know, it's gone into the ether. You may not ever get any feedback. So really important that as part of this mapping, we don't just identify the companies, but the individuals as well. And you'll just feel better. You know, you'll be able to manage your own expectations. It is literally the most efficient way of the most efficient use of your time and energy when sort of entering that market. So how do we do that? What are the tools? Again, different methods. Network, actually, I've not put it on here, but network's a key one. We'll keep finding our way back at network. It really is fundamental, I think. But online, org charts, company websites, contact lists. The company website can be very, very useful, or it can be horrendous for the purpose of mapping, that is. And that's often directly related to size and scale of the business. You know, if you've got 3,000 employees in New Zealand, the contact page invariably is going to be generic. However, if you're a 30-man design studio, you're probably going to have a full breakdown there from owner/director right through associate, office manager, etc. So again, choose your poison on that, really. The point here is there's lots of different tools available. LinkedIn is what it is. It's a fantastic tool. I mean, I could talk about LinkedIn for a long time, but probably best not to. It is, on the face of it, a simple tool, and it is, but you can, the more you know about it, get quite in depth, quite sort of granular in your searching. And again, I'd recommend anyone, if they don't have a LinkedIn profile, get one. Spend time populating that profile with real relevant information. You know, we don't just want a location and a job title or a university name. Treat it like an extension of your CV. Get all the information on there, and use LinkedIn. Use it. It's a great way to network. You know, we talked about mapping the market. You can use this to map the market. You know, there's every company that I work with has got a pretty substantial presence on there, and they give updates on projects, where they're at, etc., etc. But when using it specifically for this, again, fantastic tool. I'm sorry to always bring it back to QSs as my example, but it's what I do every day. So, you know, you can use the Boolean search, which you may or not know what that is. Again, you can very quickly figure that out. You're all more than smart enough, I've no doubt. If I can use it, trust me, you'll be fine. But it's an effective tool, right? So I'm mapping out. I'm a QS. I want to work in Auckland, commercial managers and Auckland, as per the Boolean search there. And there's your contacts, and we're getting close to having a real thorough overview of the market. You know, it's all there for you to go after, introduce yourself, start making your network, and start creating your own look. And I think something important to remember here as well, as a side note, is it's really worth doing this because in my experience, the more you examine something, the more you'll see, the more you'll discover. And again, at the entry level, I think if you were to sit back and assume that you know everyone and every company that could possibly give you a fantastic career, I think you'd probably be wrong. And if you really put your heart into mapping out a sector or a geographical location relative to what you want to do, you would find, I think, or at least the probability would be that you'd discover new companies, organizations not even on your radar, not even in your thought process. So definitely worth applying the time at this stage. So moving on. We've done all the hard work. Well, we think we've done all the hard work. We really haven't. It's only just beginning, really. But we've treated our job search as a bit of a research project. We've tracked our success. We've got all the data information down on whatever format, but again, probably in Excel or something. What do we do with it? We can't just have that piece of information, that collection of data, and expect opportunity to come to us. No, we need to start engaging the contacts that we've found. This is, again, you need to basically channel your inner recruitment consultant self from a previous life or something. And look, this does not come naturally, and perhaps a lot of people don't find this easy, but you got to pitch, you got to sell yourself. It's a very competitive market. We'll come on to the sort of trends of what's going on out there later, but it's not rocket science. You know, it's a difficult market at the moment. Okay. I don't want to be negative. It's getting much better. And again, I can talk on that later, but you've got to sell yourself. You've got to separate yourself from the crowd. And this is at any level, by the way, it really is. And I have conversations day in, day out with candidates we represent, going to interview, senior, intermediates, you know, a year or two into their career. And the advice is the same. You've got to sell yourself. You've got to be prepared. Okay. So in terms of your pitch, and practice your pitch, I put there, because again, we'll come on to that, but you need to have a formula. You need to be comfortable in making use of this market map. Okay. And fundamentally, the goal here, I've mentioned network a few times. There's going to be a lot of knockbacks. There's going to be a lot of organizations where you'd want to work where there's no opportunity or whatever, but you manage your expectations. The idea of mapping the market, making these calls, introducing yourself, hopefully getting a meeting. Yes, the perfect outcome is you get opportunity, you get your job, whatever that may be. But I can tell you now, it's not going to happen on the first call. All right, you might not get a meeting, so you're going to have to do this a lot. Volume, consistency, I mentioned it there. So the preparation is really key. Okay, because you need to keep yourself motivated. You're going to be doing this a lot. It's going to eat up a lot of time, a lot of energy. And to be honest with you, if you're not prepared, it's going to be no fun. You know, I consider myself quite resilient, but I've been doing this job 9-10 years, different parts of the world. I'm still prepared. When I make a call, I know the basics of what I'm trying to get out of that. And you should do the same. You really should. Okay. So preparation wise, so know who you're calling. I mean, you do know who you're calling because you've done the research, you know, you've done the market map. But what I really mean there is if there's any additional information, if they have a LinkedIn profile, use it, know it, have it open in front of you. What's their background? Depending on your discipline and the sort of person you're talking to, maybe they're running a project, maybe they're a part of a project. Well, what is that? What are they working on? You know why you're calling. And again, this is all about, you know, motivations and sort of communicating the fact that you are prepared, because it really does matter. And link to them first to know the organization, know the projects. You may never need that information during these calls or even jumping ahead to the next slide, but hopefully we get you sat in front of people and you can start working on your network. You might never need that information, but the more you know, the more comfortable you'll be. And it's there, it's in the background, and you can pick bits up and use it where necessary. The communication piece is key. We're picking up the phone, we're calling sometimes senior people who are busy. They might have just stepped out of a meeting into a meeting, on site, whatever. That's a key reason to be prepared, but it's also a reason to be very, very clear. This is your first interaction, your first encounter with said individual. So you've got to leave a good first impression. You've got to make it count. Okay, you might get 30 seconds if you're lucky. And we'll talk more about the basics, sort of 101 of a pitch, if you like. But the point is clear, concise, direct. Okay, to the point is the best way to do this. And I mentioned practice your pitch. I do mean that. Practice it. Write it down. Practice it in a mirror. Talk to a friend. Do it to family, whoever. It gets better. It's a skill. Okay, and you can sharpen that for sure. The volume and consistency piece here, I can't stress enough. You know, I think I said earlier, finding a job, and more importantly, securing a role that's going to kickstart your career, it's a job in itself. You know, there's a lot goes into this, and you cannot be. You can't worry about obstacles. You can't worry about knockbacks. You have to remain positive. Again, all the more reason to be clear and prepared. You just roll from one to the next, and you've got to maintain the same level. Be consistent. Consistency is absolutely key across everything here. Your communication, your preparation, the amount of time you actually physically spend, you're allocating to working through your market mapping, etc., etc. So consistency is really key. And again, I've wrote there everyone to be as clear and concise and as enthusiastic as if it were your first. It could be your 20th call of the day, and you could have had 19 not so positive ones or 19 voicemails. Doesn't matter. Again, you go into it like it's your first. So in terms of practice your pitch, what is a pitch? Well, I've talked a little bit there on preparation and whatnot. But ultimately, again, trying to talk everyone into being a recruitment consultant here, but you got to get a little bit salesy, I think. Okay, you need an intro, direct, succinct. You need to explain why you're calling, and I've put listen in capitals here, and we'll talk more on this. I think in the next slide. Absolutely key, absolute mainstay of any individual who is in the process of looking for a new opportunity. I talk to people a lot about having the ability to listen. It's really key. You know, you ask the best questions in the world, you give the best intro, the best outline of you, your strengths, your weaknesses, your background, and you're using open questions. You've got to be able, and you've got to be willing to be able to just step back and listen to the response. Use the information they're giving you to your benefit. Okay, so the listen part is really fundamental, and what we really want to get out of these calls, you know, you've done the market mapping, you know what you want to do, you can talk with passion, because again, this is another benefit of doing the market mapping. When you ring sorry to do it again, but a commercial manager, for example, and you're wanting to know about opportunities, one of the key elements here, you know, you're going to talk to them of why you've chosen that organization. I'm calling you because I have these skills that I would be a great asset for you for these reasons. And that needs to be, it can't be artificial, right? It's got to be legitimate. It's got to be real. It's got to be sincere. And the very effort you've put into this market map means that you are actually calling them for a reason. I've mapped the market. You're one of the companies on my list. And ultimately, what we really want to get out of this, we want to get a meeting, right? Or an interview, call it what you will. I have noticed actually people don't use the word interview so much anymore. It's often meeting, but anyway, meeting or interview. And you may have got the wrong person, okay? But again, you're expressing a desire, you're enthusiastic, you're proactive, you're communicating well. There is no doubt in my mind that even if you have got the wrong person, they'll give you the right person, okay? Like 99% of the time. So you want to get the relevant person for you if you've got it slightly wrong on your initial mapping, which again is fine. And again, in capitals, follow is in capitals. Follow up is key, because just linking back to what I said, your main goal here, if we can drop walking straight into the perfect position for you, it's network. It's building up your brand as whatever you do, whatever you want to do in the relevant arena, okay? And every call, every meeting you have is building that brand, and you follow up as if your life depends on it. You might not think that person remembers. I guarantee you more often than not they do. So if you don't call back when you say you will, if you don't, send an email with your contact details to the HR person like the commercial managers asked you to do, yeah, it's not going to be a good look, and you'll just be sort of you'll be chasing your tail a little bit on that one. But overall, bit of prep and practice it. Get comfortable with it, okay? And that leads me on to interview prep, best practice, because ultimately this is where we hope to get to based on all this work we've just done previously. We're talking about for some people, not everyone, but first opportunity job in their desired industry, in their desired sector. And I sometimes think people don't appreciate the importance, as daft as this might sound, of a meeting or an interview. It's really important. And I think I've wrote here on my notes about, well, in capitals, skill. As I mentioned before about, the pitch and this and that, it's a skill, sure. Even more, interviewing is a skill. I'm convinced of that. I'll die on that hill. Some people are naturally very good. Some people are naturally not so good. Most people somewhere in the middle. But it is a skill. So you can train. You can make yourself better. You're not stuck at your natural level. So this again requires practice. It requires understanding the interviewing is a process, and you can work on that. You can practice, and listen, it's not rocket science. I promise you. Some of the key elements of an interview is just, I've put it here again. I think listen. Really important. If you're asking good questions, the interviewer will give you every little piece of information you need around their challenges, what they're looking for in a graduate, for example. Get them talking. They'll give you that information. You can digest that, and then you can respond with examples of yourself, and you can present yourself as a solution to whatever gap or issue they might have. So I'm very passionate about this. So I'm going to be conscious. I don't want to talk too much, but the interview part is fundamental. And again, do the mapping part right, do the pitch part right, and you will get meetings and the opportunity to expand your network, sit down, and at that point, again, you've got a great opportunity to lay out a great impression of yourself, not just now, but also in the future. What do you want to do? What are your motivations? Where do you need to develop most? So yeah, that's the end goal. In terms of running through these points here, the list could have been 3 times this, 4 times this, but some of the key elements that I think are worth they're important, worth bearing in mind is timekeeping. Kind of linked to follow up in a way. You can't be late. Be early, if anything, not too early. I personally would advise 10 minutes early, conscious of your surroundings. I'm sure none of you would be, oh, yeah, there's what you can let yourself down if you're not conscious of your surroundings. I've had, people before having cigarettes outside the front of the cafe or the front of the office. And listen, smoking or whatever doesn't make you a bad person, of course, but let's just use our brains, and we've got to maintain a professional approach. Conscious of intro. This is actually really important because you don't, in an interview meeting scenario, people, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, they do take in a lot of information. So right from that first meet, the first handshake, the first eye contact, or even the way you ask for the person at reception, whatever that sort of initial contact is with either the individual or the organization, just be really conscious of it. Attire, yes, make it relevant, please. Again, depends on your discipline, depends on what you want to do, depends on who you're meeting. I had a candidate once attend an interview in a full dress suit, black tie, because I said go formal. Bizarre, but anyway, not to be recommended. So be very conscious of sort of mirror. It is important, again, linked to perception, linked to first impressions. Be prepared. We talk about preparation a lot. Now, this really what I'm talking about here, as I put in the brackets there, yes, you're prepared when you're making the calls about the company, the organization, the projects, et cetera, fine. Once you get in front of people in person, be prepared to talk about yourself. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be technical or experience based. And by the way, if we're aiming this specifically at graduates, let's say, who by definition don't have a CV with 10 years experience, 15 years experience, your motivations, your goals, your strengths, you need to be very clear on them, and you need to be prepared and able to communicate and talk around that freely. So again, preparation for this is slightly different, and I'd focus on yourself, in truth. Listen, we've talked about that. Strengths and weaknesses, I've sort of linked to be prepared. That's really key, by the way. The weaknesses part, especially. No one wants a sort of know-it-all. No one wants someone who comes in there and is confidence is a good thing, but just be aware of the scenario. Okay, be aware of what's actually going on, and yes, confident in your ability, but also humble enough to sort of communicate areas where you need improvement, and also your willingness to learn, and your willingness to learn while having a job to do is really important. Examples, again, of what I just mentioned. The questions element of it, I think is important because it links back to the listen. You've got to ask relevant questions. And there's no script here. I can't give you a list of questions, and I wouldn't give you a list of questions to ask. It really boils down to you as an individual. Again, ambitions, goals, morals, whatever your own decision-making process is, the information you need to make them decisions, they're the questions you ask. But ask questions is what I would say. Positive, upbeat, enthusiastic, engaging. I put here, I've tried to withhold all as many cliches as possible, but the people hire people is really important. I'm just going to jump on. I think we possibly might be going against time here. So I'll just give you very briefly I'll give you very briefly. I was going to give you a bit of a snapshot of the bit of a snapshot of the market, some information, market trends, but I don't seem to be able to get that up anymore. Anyway, I can share this. I can share this later. I was going to talk to you about again, sort of trends we're seeing from a hiring perspective and whatnot. But I'll share all that information later. So look, what I'm going to do, I'm going to tie it, sort of wrap it up there. Happy to pick up on this after. I'm sure Malcolm and Hannah can share my direct contact details. So I'm happy to help where I can. And I will, I'll pass over to the other Ben Shaw from Successful Resumes, and he's gonna give you a bit more information. So thanks for looking, guys. I'll just I'll hand you over.
Hello, hi everybody. Hope that's worked. You can hear and see me okay. Got lost a little bit there on the Zoom. Thanks for tuning in today, and thanks to Ben for that overview of his side of things from a recruitment point of view. I'm going to talk to you today, obviously around CVs. That's what we do at Successful Resumes. My background is around 15 years experience in recruitment, mostly in core government, but I have done some trades recruitment as well in the UK. So yeah, so as I said, Successful Resumes, we have been operating for a long time, since the early 90s. We started in Australia. We've got around 50 writers, 6 here in New Zealand, so 2 with me in Wellington and 3 up in Auckland, Bay of Plenty. Our core business is really supporting clients through the job application process. So it's sort of that informal career counselling, knowing what we know from a sort of recruitment background, but essentially it's creating targeted application documents, connecting people with jobs and recruiters. Got a couple of slides to show you, which I'm just going to share here. So hopefully you guys can see that. So yeah, preparing for your job search. There'll be a couple of crossovers here with what Ben's talked about. Obviously, we're operating in the same field, but essentially we're going to be talking about some of the some CV tips, and first up, some of the planning work that you can do. So you know, I think starting with preparing for your job search, you know, job applications, the whole thing has changed a lot over the last 10 or 15 years. It's become you know, increasingly competitive. It's okay to move jobs now every year or two. There's a lot more people in the market. There's also a whole lot of sort of competing advice out there. So for you guys starting out, I think it can be difficult to know where to start. And so today we'll go over some basics. Some of it you'll already know, but I think if you kind of stick to some of these points, then you'll make a good start. I'm sure a lot of you out there are feeling, you know, pretty anxious about starting the process. I know, you know, working with, you know, early career people, graduates right through to executives, you know, a lot of people sort of struggle with knowing how to approach it. So I think if you're following the right process, knowing where to spend your time and effort, then you'll take a lot of the anxiety out of it. Hopefully some of this stuff today will help with that. So yeah, starting with making a plan, similar to what Ben talked about, you know, figuring out, obviously you'll know, most of you will already, about, you know, what you're going to do in the short term, medium term and long term. What do you want to do? How are you going to get there? I think talking to friends, family members, industry professionals, recruiters, CV writers, getting out there and talking to people is a key thing. Knowing your skills as well. So knowing what you can do, what you've done, what have you gained through your school, through your work experience so far, any voluntary community sports stuff is also key. Research. A lot of Ben's talk today was around mapping. I think it's critical, but you've got to know where the jobs are, what skills are employers looking for. I've got some resources later on that I can show you, I will show you, and we'll also send them out after today's presentation. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I'll call it a job search tracker. I talk to my clients about it, but you know, rather than just sort of being sporadic and sending off applications left, right, and centre to keep an idea of a track of where you're going, it's really a good idea. So company and contact information, you know, dates you've applied, any documents you've sent, and of course any feedback that you received. Networking, again, Ben mentioned it, but for me, it's probably the most important part of it. I mean, there's putting the CV together itself, but you know, you can do all the research you want, but there's nothing really that builds confidence more than getting out and talking to people. So again, encouraging you to talk to, you know, people who have had the interns right now, past graduates, early career people as well. Linked with networking, I think getting out and seeing or attending some of your career hubs events. I know here in Wellington at Massey and at Vic, they've got really great careers hubs where you can attend, you know, recruitment events, careers expos. They'll have employer presentations, information sessions where you can actually go out and meet their HR managers or design managers, as Ben said, or anybody from your industry. So I think that's a really great idea to get out and learn from those professionals what they're looking for, you know, discover the skills and attributes that some of those employers are valuing. Social media, straighten out your social media presence. I think it's really important. Most people know these days that, you know, it's important to have a strong social media presence in terms of if you've got your Facebook and your LinkedIn profiles out there, then that they're at the right level. You know, a good application can sort of easily be undone when employers see, you know, poorly written posts or unprofessional screen names, etc. Targeted applications, obviously that's the key part of it. Well, I've got a couple of slides in a second which will talk through the CV and cover letter. And then there's the practice tests and interviewing. Again, Ben talked a bit about that, but certainly studying up on your interviews, it's all good. Doing this work on your CV, getting to the interview stage, but how are you going to prepare? What are you preparing for? Understanding, you know, what a behavioral interview is, aptitude test as well, or psychometric tests they're called. So I'm not sure whether they use so much in the construction industry. Ben will know more about that, but certainly in government, we do a lot of verbal and numeric and problem solving testing, psychometric tests. I've got some resources later on again where you can go and practice doing those if you need to. Okay, so on to the CV. So I've called it getting the basics right, and many of you will already have CVs, I'm sure, so I'm just going to run through this pretty quickly in terms of giving you some advice on what I believe should be in a CV, on what some of these recruiters and hiring managers are looking for. So personal and contact information, I think, you know, keep it brief. Name, you know, suburb, town, contact details are fine. There's a lot of unconscious bias around photos, you know, people used to include age and health status and marital status and things like that. There's no need for any of that. Just keep it to the basics. Key part of the CV for me, and where I spend a lot of time as a CV writer, is in this profile or summary section. It's sort of the first section that goes into the CV. It's where you will have an opportunity to match up your experience to the specific job requirements, and I think it's a really good idea to be reviewing obviously every job you apply to and ensuring that your profile is a good match. Sort of 60 to 70% of the job requirements you can address in that profile section, but just with 3 or 4 bullet points. All right, so what are the key requirements in this job you're applying to, and how do you meet those? So aligning it to the job is really, really key. People will come to me and say they need you know, 3 or 4 different CVs for 3 or 4 different jobs. My advice is to have one with a strong profile that you can adapt, revise, target to different applications. All right. Some of the stuff you may include in there, it might be talking about your technical or practical understanding. It might be that you've recently graduated from a relevant construction course, or that you've got a solid understanding of the New Zealand Building Code, or there may be a requirement within a job for a technical piece of software. So do you have an understanding of building materials information systems, ground plan, SimPro? Could be anything. All right, so that's where you're matching it up in the profile section. Education and qualifications definitely on the front page for graduates. I think this is one of the key things you have to sell, as well as your work experience. But you know, simply stating your qualifications is fine, but what else have you done at university? So can we include any contributions around project work? You know, if it's design work or any tools or specific applications that you've used, where is the relevant information? What's the job require? What can we include in there? As well as including, you know, first aid or site safe certificates or any other additional training that you've done. Work history and or experience. This is a key part of the CV. I've got a separate slide for that after this one. Relevant skills in the job section. I think, you know, a section with keywords in that match up to the job requirements. There's a lot of talk around applicant tracking systems and artificial intelligence, and, you know, larger companies using AI to scan CVs, which they do. Not so many in New Zealand, although I know that some of the big telco companies do it. So look, matching up keywords in CVs is important. A section that does that is a good idea on the front page. Community, voluntary, sports, cultural activities, I think, you know, increasingly important today. You know, employers are looking for more rounded experience, diversity, etc. So definitely include that. Referees, everybody asks about referees. I think no need to include them on your CV, but if you have got senior level referees, pop them on your CV. It just shows the recruiter that you've got, you know, senior people willing to sort of vouch for you, if you like. I'm just conscious of time here, so I'm just going to run through this employment history, or the work section. I think it's a key one because a lot of people struggle with knowing what to put into their CV in terms of, do they just repeat the job description responsibilities? I think as recruiters, we want to see evidence of what you've actually done that's related to the job requirement. So yes, what you're accountable for and responsible for in your role, but we all know what you do as a QS or as a, you know, project manager or whatever it might be. We're more interested in seeing how you've contributed, added value, how you've made a difference in your role. Number of ways we can do that. But some examples are around, you know, you may have supported procurement processes or negotiated with suppliers or customers. How have you supported projects or working on multiple projects, exceeding deadlines or expectations? What technologies or computer systems have you used, and in what capacity? In describing those things, I think it's good to use action verbs. And what I mean by that is, you know, that you wrote something, or you communicated something, or you documented something, you designed, you advised somebody. So action verbs as a way to articulate what you've actually done and delivered. Quantified to differentiate at the end here. I think that's critical. We're always talking to people about, well, you know, how do we know that? How can you show me the metrics around it? So it could be many different things, but examples are around the amount of money that you've saved, budgets that you may have managed, or, you know, have you been selected as a leader in a university project, or as, you know, a team leader in a paid role. Anything that you've done around improving efficiency, that type of thing. Okie doke. Moving on to cover letters. Yeah, I think cover letters can make all the difference. Some hiring managers, they are the most important part of the job application. A lot of recruiters not so interested. They want to see the skills, the experience in order to get that short list of candidates together. But definitely when your CV, your application gets in front of the hiring manager, they're certainly interested in, you know, why you're applying to the role. What is it that you are going to bring? How are you going to make a difference? Where are the relevant experiences? So that's where we're going to with this. You know, internships and graduate roles, I think hiring managers are definitely interested in real life work experience as opposed to overstating what you've done academically. Important to try and, you know, express yourself in a sort of conversational, genuine way rather than being overly formal. We see a lot of that in cover letters. And you know, my go-to format for a cover letter is keep it to one page. Give the hiring manager or the recruiter 3 reasons why you're interested, you know, what you'll bring to the role and why you're a good fit. And 2 last very brief slides, just some resources here, which we're going to send out to you. I had some stats on the importance of LinkedIn in there, but definitely it's an important tool for you guys to get set up and start operating from that platform. You can contact me afterwards and we can talk more about that. And there's just some websites here that cover, you know, the career planning, job application advice, lots of tips and tricks there as well. So we'll send that out to you. Yeah, and there's the link there which we'll send out to you on our business. And we're going to look at some discounted rates for you student members. So that's it, 11:57, had to run through that pretty quickly. Going to stop sharing that, come back to me. And yeah, I think we're handing back over to Malcolm.
It's me. Thank you very much, Ben and Ben. So a couple of things that stood out to me. Ben, you talked there about sort of 3 key words that came through. Ben Holman: initiative, engagement, and proactiveness. So how do you sort of demonstrate those 3 things? And I know they're aspects too, as well as communications, that came through quite strongly in the recent Hayes Construction NZIOB salary guide. So we don't have a lot of time, but Ben Holman, do you want to just quickly pick up on that?
Yes, sorry, Malcolm, I was muted there. Yeah, they are key. They're in terms of how do we, I mean, everything we talked about, the mapping, all that sort of stuff, picking up the phone, avoiding generic, you know, online ads and really going after the people you need to talk to. That's really what I'm referring to when I talk about engagement and proactiveness. Yeah, it's so important, Malcolm, honestly. And, you know, the clients we work with tell us that. That's just not my opinion. You know, it might be annoying sometimes, you know, when they're come in and out of meetings and the same person's calling, but they appreciate it. You know, if someone's got the initiative and the wherewithal to pursue someone, you know, based on their ambition and motivation, and not just click send on a blind job ad online, it's a good sign of what's to come, right? If that person gets the opportunity in the business, so it's to be recommended. Would
it be fair to say, and Ben, sure, you could comment on this also, that employers, and certainly I'm in this category, like to see a little bit of the personality come through as well, because you see you see a good, well-written CV, and that's your first step in. And Ben Holman, you talked about the job is to actually get an interview. Once you're in that interview, to show something of yourself and your uniqueness and of your character and your personality. What's your recommendation on that? Because fundamentally, people like to work with people. 1, they'll do the job, or have confidence they'll have the skills to do the job, and 2, that they believe will be enjoyable to have in the office and to work with for a period of time. So how far do you take that in terms of showing your personality?
Yeah. So I guess I've got to be careful what I say. I think I might over egg this a little bit. It is the most important thing. I absolutely believe that. And again, people don't hire CVs, right? Or skills or experience. Now, them CVs and skills and experience make up a person, but they hire the individual and the personality, your motivations, what you're all about. Are you a family person? Do you travel? Whatever. That is all, in my opinion, just as important, if not more so, than the technical side. You got to remember that a lot of times when you get to the interview, the assumption is you can do the job. Already that assumption's been made. So why is the interview happening? Well, because again, people hire people, not experiences or skills. So yeah, I think you're right, Malcolm. In terms of how to do it, I mean, look, I think you just need to try and relax, understand it's a conversation, understand it's a two-way process, an interview. Be formal, yes, but you got to smile, right? They don't want to hire a robot. So you got to be willing to engage and be comfortable in talking about just what you're all about.
Okay, that's good. I'm just conscious of time. We just hit 1 o'clock and we should wrap this up. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. One is if you're graduating with the construction qualification of any type, my view would be an approach is to treat that qualification as a passport to an industry, not just to a profession. And there's many examples, and I used to run an architectural practice, and some of the graduates we brought into our system later on started working for main contractors and running their BIM program and all sorts of things. Some of the most exciting technology is actually not in the design space anymore, it's in the main contractor. So just treat it as if you've got a degree in quantity surveying, it doesn't mean you're going to be a quantity surveyor working in a quantity surveyor office for the rest of your career. It's a passport into this industry. Was one thing that I was going to pass on. And that you are entering a very exciting industry. And I want to pick up on the networking just to close out. Networking is, Ben Holman was talking about, is critical. May I suggest the membership associations, NZIOB is one clearly, but so is NZIQS, Institute of Architects, Engineering NZ, and particularly those qualification ones that are tied to a qualification are really good to start meeting principals and managers of particular companies, and then go out a bit more broadly as you go along. People like Institute of Building, we've got members from many different strands and professions that you can start taking a wider scope. But it doesn't matter who it is, get involved with them. A couple of quick questions here that we should respond to. This is probably one for you. What's the dress code for a QS job interview?
I would say smart casual.
Smart casual, very good.
Yes.
And we've had someone say, this probably sounds a bit obvious, but just to clarify, when you go to see a recruiter, they're matching your suitability to be on sent to an interview with an employer. So, are you reading that that question there?
Is that one?
Ben Holman. But anyway, that's the way I would view it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, so if it's recruitment specific, so we introduce to the client, but yeah, we have no part of the hiring process in terms of decision making. Yeah, that's what the interview's for. So we will provide options to both candidate and client, and hopefully it's a match.
Okay, one last question, then we're going to go. What are the key transferable skills that employers are looking for in a graduate? I think you talked about a lot of those already, though.
Yeah, I think honestly, I just think aptitude, sort of, your ability to communicate, engage. None of that is construction specific. Just how do you present yourself? How do you communicate? How do you plan on getting to where you want to be career-wise? Can you talk about that? Again, not construction related, but just the ability to communicate, I think, is very, very important.
That's great. Well, we're better close it out there. Thank you to Ben and Ben for your involvement, and thank you for those attendees. as part of the preparation for getting into a new job, you're ahead of the pack. There's about 100 people who registered this who didn't come along. So well done to those who did. Thanks very much. And we'll hope to see you at an NZIOB event in the future. Thank you.